What's up, gamers? Today I will be talking about my predictions for play rates, playability of set 3 leaders. This is just going to be first impressions. It's by no means definitive. These are just my first impressions, and maybe they'll be right, maybe they'll be wrong. We're going to hop into this with Nalase. Nalase, I think might be a little overrated in terms of not necessarily, we don't really know how other people are rating her yet, but like I think people will look at this and be like, oh, you could play something out of aspect, similar to how you can play specters out of aspect with the set one leader, um, and be like, oh, this is there might be something here. I know one of the places that people went to first with her where was with Wrecker and playing Wrecker in a blue green villainy deck with her, and it's a bit weird to me because we have decks to compare that to in set 2 meta, specifically Hantu Blue, where Hantu Blue did try Wrecker a little bit, and because it disrupts the curve so much, decided to move away from it. Here, it's like, okay, well, we can now do it with ECL, which is really cool, but are we now making Wrecker the top of the curve in a blue-green villainy deck? Like, maybe there might be something there, but it's at the cost of having just a 1/7 leader that gives a conditional heal 2 on base on the flip. Like, all she's really doing is just letting us play Wrecker. There's maybe some other stuff that might be like, okay, we could fit that into the deck. Like Tech, for example, you could play out of Aspect without a penalty in Nalase. But that's again, that's going the opposite direction, where Tech is now a really grindy card, and by nature of adding Wrecker, we don't really want to be that grindy of a deck anymore. So I personally don't really think she's going to be played at all. I'm very tempted to just slot her into no automatically, but like maybe there is something there. Maybe somebody can figure something out that like works really well with her. So I'm gonna move her into unlikely. Next we have Gunray. I think this, if exploit, is gonna be a deck that's composition is heavily into the exploit mechanic. I think this leader will be somewhat necessary. I did some preliminary testing a few weeks ago with exploit, and I found that there were big issues with adding a bunch of. There were big issues when trying to play the exploit mechanic heavily because of the necessity to have units to activate it. Those units aren't that good, so that it ends up being that a lot of the deck has dead draws. So one of the benefits of Gunray is that, okay, maybe I don't need to play so many bad units, and I can just continually make battle droid tokens. But it's also like, if it was one or more, I think it would be more approachable. It being two or more, like you have to be exploiting two consistently. There's not many cards that do that. One was spoiled today that does look like it would be really good, and then it can curve out into some other big exploit twos and exploit threes, and you're always getting one token back. So like it might have some play if the exploit as a mechanic became an entire deck. I just don't know if that's the direction that I'm not sure if that deck could be viable in the current meta that we have. I think it would be a very fun deck. I had a lot of fun playing the exploit deck, but into everything I tried it into with only half the deck, half the set spoiled, it wasn't good. At least relying on exploit wholly, and that was with like Newt Gunray, Kira, and Watt Tambor that I tried it, and a little bit Dooku, but Dooku has his own issues and is also slightly different, which I'll get into when we get to him. So again, I'm very tempted to put no, but I'm gonna put unlikely for now. Maybe there's something that comes together with Gunray and exploit, but I think most likely not. Next we have Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now I really like that this leader has Sentinel on flip. It's normally if a leader flips after 5 resources, he can't exist in a meta of Sabine. Like as long as Sabine exists as a leader, anything that flips later than 5 is most likely not going to be able to be played. One of the exceptions we saw with that was Rey, because she has such a positive interaction with Sabine when she flips by having a big booty that's actually hard for her to kill, although kind of dies to, if the opponent has prepared for it, kind of dies to Wrecker ECL, kind of dies to Poe ECL, but then you just have a Sentinel in front of her like Obi-Wan Kenobi, the set 1 unit, make sure that she could actually stick and start healing, get some experience on her to make her big and hard to remove. It actually did work pretty well as an anti-Sabine deck. And I think maybe Obi-Wan could see some play in that aspect, but the thing is, one of the questions I'm always asking myself when I'm looking at these leaders is there a new deck that's going to be built around them? Is there an existing deck that they're going to slot into? And then the other two is how do they fare into Sabine and Boba? And I don't really see this doing an insane amount against Boba. I think there are going to be too many ways to deal with it. I think like having Sentinel on a unit that can't be bounced is nice, but there are just a bunch of ways to just attack into this and deal with it with Surprise Strike and Hotshot Blaster when playing units like Zuckuss and 4 attack units with Surprise Strike. Um, like the leader, it's like Boba leader itself, Surprise Strike, kill it. And then the going back to the first two things I was talking about, like what deck does it slot into? Is there a new deck that it would slot into? I think it would just be a force deck, like a blue, most likely blue-red force deck like we originally saw with Chirrut, and then in set 2 we saw it with Rey and Han 2. Han 2 I think being definitively better, but Rey having her own merits against Sabine. Would this replace any of them? I don't think there's a new deck that ends up being built around it. I think we have that force deck that already exists, and now is this better than Rey or Han 2? And I think the answer is almost definitely no. Again, this is yet another leader I would probably just like slide right into no, but I guess like in testing maybe the Sentinel is more relevant than the Restore on Rey. It's just we already have the OB unit to do that. Do we need our leader to do that too? When we could just have OB unit and then give the experience to Rey, or we could have Han cheating out units earlier and helping us ramp and smoothing out our curve and making us better against the non-Sabine decks. Like, would it ever be OB over either of those? I think it's almost a definitive no, but we'll put him in unlikely. Now, I love this next leader. Let's talk about Yoda. I think Yoda is super cool. There's some while being super cool and having a lot of control utility and a lot of like mid-range utility and manipulating or drawing an extra card and manipulating the top of your deck, this is where I think we need to start talking about combo potential, which there's this combo with Yoda using A New Hope and or You're My Only Hope, and the Now There Are Two of Them combo in this set. And both of those combos are extremely inconsistent. They have the Now There Are Two of Them, for example, has a 15% chance success rate in Boba Green that's ramping. It would Boba Green, which would be the most likely deck to only have Boba on flip, like only the leader on flip, which then it'd be like, okay, this fits the best there, but then it's only a 15% success rate to have that on curve, and if it's not on curve, do you really care about it? Answer's probably not, and that means 85% of your games, you're going to have 3 dead draws in the deck. It's going to be very similar here. It's a little harder to quantify because Now There Are Two can be a little more consistent, but I think the success rate is going to be minimal, like the relevancy is going to be very minimal of that combo, so the combo itself is probably not going to be a reason to play it. I might be wrong. And then we're left with a leader that does have very good deck filtering, like card draw and card selection, and can do some like cool things, but it flips on 7. It flips on 7, and Sabine exists as 15 to 25% of the current meta, and I don't see that changing in set 2. If people are trying new things, I actually think, like new things and slower things, I actually think Sabine is going to really capitalize on that more than other decks and just really punish them. Maybe this ends up having a deck that can function with a combo. Yet again, I am very tempted to just slam him into no. but like maybe there's something somebody could figure out with a combo. It's this one more than the others. I'm leaning towards no, just because of the 7 flip, just because Sabine exists. I think as long as that leader exists, 7 flips are just you can't really make them work. Um, it I guess because it has more potential with You're My Only Hope, and more potential than now there are two of them. I think maybe we can say it's unlikely. I'll give it some credit there and be like, okay, maybe this leader will see play. Moving on to Dooku. I know a lot of people are very high on this leader. I sadly not, and a big part of that is it flips on 7. I don't think what it's bringing, the separatists that it's providing ramp on, are going to be that good. Playing a unit, it comes back to the same issue that I was talking about with Gunray, where it's like, how much of your deck do you need to devote to bad units? Like, some of them you can get away with, like Inferno 4, but what's his name? Admiralty, the one that readies a unit. Like, even though that unit has a big upside, it is a bad turn 1 play. Is it worth it to have your turn 1 play be Admiral Moti and then like just be looking at Kraken, Legionaries as your turn 2 plays with Dooku? I'm pretty sure they're the only two main separatists at 5 that are worth playing. Um, Maybe there's some that I missed. The full set is spoiled now, but I just skimmed it. It's tough to say, and then even if that is like if that does work and like there are enough like units like Inferno 4 or like Modi is reasonable enough to like run um and you don't have to fill the deck with stuff like Poggle that's just generating a token. You don't have to fill the deck with there's two new 2 cost units in this set, one in blue, one in green, that spawn a token when they're defeated. I think one's a 1/4 and the other one's a 2/1 space. Without Is there a way to build the deck without needing to just fill it with all of these bad draws, especially in a deck that's intended to go long, and then you just draw like think about blue-green villainy as it currently is, and how bad it feels to just draw a resupply super laser tech and like get these dead draws in the late game, and additionally how much density of bombs need to be packed into the deck to make sure that you're drawing well late game. Like you have like a 50% hit rate on a bomb in the late game, and now you're just taking that and shifting it towards all of this fodder to help you exploit. It doesn't sound like it will be that good to me. I think if there is an exploit deck, it probably won't revolve around Dooku. I haven't really seen a separatist card, maybe Kraken, that really just says, oh, this combo is going to really work. There's also this one that my friend pointed out with Droid Deployment and Infiltrating Demolisher on turn 1. It's a 2-card combo, though, so I'm investing 2 cards to pull this off. You give an Infiltrating Demolisher exploit 2. You play Droid Deployment, use Dooku to give this exploit 2 so you can sacrifice both the droids from Droid Deployment, and you play this on turn 1. And it's like, wow, you got a 4/5 Saboteur on turn 1. That sounds amazing. Well, first off, if we look at the odds of this happening, like you draw 6 cards, you have 3 copies of each, it's a 9.28% chance. If you're mulling for it specifically, so not even just like you have a playable hand and you keep it, but like you're always mulliganing for this hand is the condition that we have to look at here, then it goes up to 17% chance using I forget what the algorithm is, but I think it's like a 17.6. I can't remember. I just did it earlier. Maybe I have it open on a calculator. I do. It's a 17.69% percent chance to hit that combo if you're always mullining for it. And then even if you hit it, you're investing 2 cards that will essentially just slow down the ground arena, and hopefully your Infiltrating Demolisher will trade with 2 units. So like your opponent's turn, if your opponent playing against Boba, if you're playing yellow, if you're playing against Sabine ECL, then okay, you got a nice unit to like trade with those units, but then also you're giving your opponent initiative, so they're just going to be able to go face with their first unit. Then you have to attack Infiltrating Demolisher into it. If it's Boba Yellow, it might be a Shielded Crafty Smuggler, and then they play a 3/5, and then if they end up getting, like, because they attack face, if they end up getting initiative, they just clear it up with their 3/5, and now you've spent two cards to get nothing, and barely even slow down any damage. You still take 3 damage. It's a big stretch when comparing what this deck can do to the decks that we already know are established and good. Like, I'm not sure if it's going to be able to compete in the current meta that we already have, especially because it's a 7 flip leader. If it wasn't a 7 flip leader, if this flipped on 5, because again, Sabine exists. As long as Sabine exists, can't really be flipping too late. So if it flipped on 5, then yeah, maybe that would work. Maybe 6, but flipping on 7, uh, it's I don't think it's going to be a thing. I think again, definitively, this is going to be a no. I think this is actually the most definitively no. I, I've been told, I've had so many people make the argument to me that like so many of these things will be viable and they're worth testing, and I do agree that they're worth testing. That okay, like sure, let's put it into unlikely because there are these things that are genuinely worth testing, but like we'll put it into unlikely. All right, moving on to Watt Tambor. So he flips on 5, so that's always great. He's green though. He's green, so he's not going to be able to be played with ECL if you would want to do that. Or you would have to do double green. And then, like, also, what is he fitting into with his ability? Probably, like, the most obvious thing to go to is exploit, because you're going to exploit a unit, and then you can give something else +2/+2, because you're always making sure you defeat something. You're fighting for board control, and you attack into something like... What is really doing that? Like, what would this slot into where its ability is doing something relevant where... Like, okay, like, +2/+2 is a very relevant number against Sabine. You could play, like, a 3-attack unit on turn 2, and then turn 3, first action, like, do something to... If your turn 1 play is... Like, your turn 1 play has to be live in this line, and then you could trade your turn 1 play into something, and then give +2/+2 to your turn 2 play, and now that turn 2 play can threaten the Sabine flip or kill like a K2SO that comes down, because you can never really just keep passing. That's going to be something that comes up with Quinlan Voss later. You can't just sit there and keep passing against Sabine, leaving all your resources open, which, I mean, with this, you can do other stuff. You could still play a card. With Quinlan, there's some issues with it, but with this, you could still play a card at least, and then try to get them to bait out, try to action sync and try to get them to play the Sabine and then attack into it. There aren't really many scenarios I can see where the +2/+2 like it can threaten the Boba flip. There are, again, I only skimmed the new set. I don't think it's gonna come up that much. Um, and then I'm just not sure if this is gonna, like, in the decks that already exist, like let's say the green villainy decks that exist, so you know, yellow green villainy, blue green villainy, red green villainy. Like, we have red green villainy with Bosk. Is this ever going to be going over Bosk? Bosk also flips on 5 and has a super strong ability. Probably not. We have blue green villainy with Kira. No. We have a yellow green villainy with Boba. No. Like, yet again, this one is almost definitively no, in my opinion. At least, like, definitively, I shouldn't really be saying definitively. I would predict that it's most likely going to be no. And I'm going to go ahead and actually put this one in no. This was one of the first leaders I tried with Exploit. It was a lot of fun. It's cool giving things +2/+2 and getting these value trades and like trading up and whatnot, but it's very conditional. You have to be trading something in first, and we're in a meta that is extremely fast with Boba and Sabine. Maybe if the meta changes a lot and it is more grindy, but then if it's more grindy, why would you be playing this leader over a more grindy leader? Like, then you can play something like Dooku, then you can play something like Yoda, then you can play something like Palp, which, you know, when we're comparing grindy leaders, if the meta ever does go grindy, why would you ever play anything but Palp is a big question. So that's going to be another, talking about the grindy leaders, like, why? Why would we do these? Palp exists. Okay. So moving on to Captain Rex. So actually, I really like Rex. Rex is, in terms of playability, I think one of the most playable leaders from this set. I think it's mostly because of his flip. The issue is that I don't think there's enough support for him. I think in a future set, when there is more support for him, he's going to be very, very good. Currently, I think it's unlikely that he will see play because the shell for him most likely doesn't exist. there needs to be very pushed clone generating cards, and right now the clone generating cards aren't pushed. They're about on value or slightly undervalue compared to cards of similar cost from earlier sets. He puts, just from his flip alone, he's putting 4/9. His 2/6 stats, and then the 2/2 token with the +0/+1. He's putting 4/9 of stats onto the field. That's insane. In terms of grinding out and like fighting grindy decks, he's just constantly playing a 2/2 for 2. He probably plays like something lower to the ground, and he just like he can grind because of that, because he's just constantly putting a 2/2 out plus whatever his play is, and you just play 2 under. You play like a more like aggro-y, maybe even tempo-y style deck, like maybe there could be something there with yellow. Um, I think out of all of the ones that we've gone over so far, this one is probably the closest to being a maybe, but I'm pretty sure that the cards to make him work do not exist yet. He's somebody that I think will come back later, but I don't think will exist for now. But I will put him in maybe because I've been kind of just like placing everyone one over what I think they will be. Let's throw him into maybe. He'll be our first maybe. Um, just currently, there, it's not a grindy meta. This meta is not grindy. The clone cards aren't extremely pushed compared to, like, let's say the Rebel package in Sabine and the cards that exist in Boba Yellow, like, and the non-Rebel cards like Wrecker, Poe, Darksaber. Like, there are all these extremely pushed cards in these tier 1 decks. Rex doesn't have that. His ability is also very grindy in a fast meta. Let's move on. So next we have Padme. I don't even think that there's much worth in talking about Coordinate. I think Coordinate's going to be way too hard to get off. It's mostly an ability that's going to be beneficial in a racing scenario, and I'm skeptical about how often the opponent will let it be, even against like a Sabine, for example. If they know they need to take you off Coordinate, are they going to actually let you activate it? Or are there going to be like key turns where they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to take away a unit now. Like on the leader flip turn, yes, you can get leader plus unit and play a unit. So you already have to have a unit on the board, flip your leader for the second unit, and get a third unit. But like on the leader side, you have to have 3 units aside from that. So like when are you ever using a leader with Coordinate? That's almost never is going to be the answer. Especially with, again, referencing the clone cards, they're very under pushed. So like, or they're very standard power level. They're not over pushed. So definitively this, not definitively again, try not to use that word, but like we can say with confidence that she's not going to see any play. Aside from like people testing her out at the beginning, like trying to make stuff work, like they'll, in terms of competitive, like this is a PQ you're going in for. I should have said that at the beginning. In terms of like this is a PQ that you're preparing for, 7-round event. Very, your deck has to be very consistent against the field. It's not going to be Padme. It's not going to be any leader with Coordinate on their leader side ability. All right, Maul. So the force unit, a lot of these leaders are force. I haven't been mentioning that, but like the traits are decent. Attack with unit gain and overwhelm, so like it lets you go for board control, like in a more towards like a grindy kind of play style while still pushing damage, so you can be like a little faster while still being able to grind. What deck is this going to go in, though? Is there going to be a new deck for it to pop up in? It also flips on 6. Does it survive against Sabine? Is it going to be doing anything against Boba Yellow? Um, the flipping on 6 is, I think, a very big issue against Sabine. It does let you attack your units into Sabine unit and do overwhelm, but how often is that going to line up and actually do any relevant amount of damage? Sabine's still going to be the one that's in the driver's seat racing, especially when you're flipping 2 turns later than her. I think he can pretty easily just go into no. He flips on, just flipping on 6 is just, it's, and what he's doing, it's not even helping him interact with Sabine better. And Sabine, again, 15 to 25% of metas currently, so yeah. If your deck can't survive against Sabine and Boba, if it can't survive against one or the other, highly shouldn't consider playing it. If it can't survive against both, then definitely don't play it. Maybe Maul can survive against Boba Yellow, definitely not Sabine. I would say probably Boba Yellow isn't. He's not gonna be able to get any insane points into that either. Maybe just slightly favored, like a red-green villainy deck, like we see with Boss Green being get like some few percentage points into Boba, but it's not worth playing him. It's actually probably still slightly losing. Moving into pre-Vizsla. I actually needed to read this card again. Deal damage to unit equal to the number of cards you've drawn this phase. So this doesn't actually include the regroup phase because that's at the end of a phase. It only counts the stuff from the beginning of the phase. He flips on 5, so that's cool. 4/6 flips on 5. There are some interesting ways to get his ability to work with, like, I can't remember the cards off the top of my head, but basically anything that searches and draws a card. I mean, so search your feelings, but more relevant cards, like units that draw, that like look at the top and then draw cards. There's a few of those that exist, like the Tarkin unit, where you can look in and like draw cards. And then you would have, but the thing is, you have to underplay it, and then, but then it would turn his ability into a, like with Tarkin, like what is it, 2 cards, 3 cards that it draws? I should know this, but to make the video, but I'm pretty sure Tarkin's 2. Even if it is 3, though, this is now 5 resources that it's happening on. We're playing Tarkin on 5 resources, using the last resource to deal 3 damage somewhere. And prior to that, we've probably not used his ability at all. It's going to be very hard to actually consistently fit his ability in because it has a cost. It's going to be something that favors a longer game where you're actually able to sink resources into your ability. Or, you know, if the ability was something like Rey or Tarkin, where you can just play undercurve but then still get relevant ability consistently. I don't think this is that. I, like the gaining Saboteur, if you have 6 or more, gaining +2/+0, like it is very synergistic with its other side. Just like I'm thinking, you know, what is this going to go in? Like a red-green villainy? Going to go on a red-blue villainy? Probably not. Like maybe the red-blue villainy decks that, what do they play with? They play with Grand Inquisitor. Like Grand Inquisitor is using very specific cards for that deck. There's been some like mid-rangey Iden decks, some mid-rangey Kira decks that have popped up, but then like, would you ever use this over Kira in those mid-rangey Kira decks? Probably not. Like, all right, so it's going to be something we have to design a completely new deck for that's utilizing its ability. And I'm not sure if if this ability is strong enough to enable these suboptimal cards. Like Tarkin is not played. Like, okay, so it's got to bring bad cards into a deck, and now these bad cards are becoming good because of his ability, and or like mediocre cards are becoming good because of his ability. I don't think that's gonna happen. I think given the uncertainty, like okay, like yeah, we could just throw him into maybe the unlikely category. Maybe even the maybe category, because there really could be something there with him that I just haven't seen. But it's probably unlikely, so I am tempted to just bump him up in case I'm missing something. But like, we're gonna just go with unlikely. Ahsoka, I don't think we need to talk about this one too much. It's coordinate leader side, so her ability is not good enough, and then it's a coordinate unit leader unit side. But like, you know, you're probably gonna be able to get this off, but it's gonna be a 5/6 on flip. Those stats aren't even that insane with the condition of needing 2 other units. Just all it is a 5/6. Yeah, it has good traits. Red blue heroic force deck, like reference back to that. But then like, would it ever be played over Rey, Han 2, Chirrut, etc. The new Obi, and I think this is probably the least played out of all of them. It would probably want to be like a more go-wide deck to activate coordinate, maybe not even red-blue, maybe there's going to be another color combination that works with Force because of all the new Force units that we're getting. Maybe there's something there. I'm going to put no, just because of how bad I think coordinate is as a leader ability, and then unit side is a little bit more easy to activate, but I don't think it's strong enough to really do anything. I think that is pretty comfortably in no. Now, to talk about Anakin. This one, maybe I should have led with this, because, like, we wouldn't have everything in here. I think this is the first probably. I don't think it's a definite, but I think it's the first probably. The action ability of deal 2 damage to your base, not even sure if it's probably, but let's talk through it. On curve, red X deck, like again, we could reference red blue heroic, but like red X deck. Let's say we're playing, I mean, but the thing is like, okay, it's playing Yoda. If we're talking a force deck, so like we would probably have to move away from force to something like, okay, we want to be playing Cassian onto. What I'm getting at is you do 2 damage to your base, give a unit +2/+0, and then attack into Sabine. But then the question is, what units are you doing that with? What 3x units, like 3 4s, 3 5s, are you playing on turn 2? That then on turn 3, you're gonna threaten the Sabine flip, and are you going to just... this doesn't have the you can play something else with this. This isn't going to be like Quinlan. We'll get to Quinlan. So yeah, so like 3x unit, 3 4, 3 5 unit. You play it on turn 2, they flip Sabine on turn 3, and you just deal 2 damage to your base and kill it, and you're left with your like a 3-2 unit or 3-3 unit still on the board that can then attack into something else. I think that has a lot of potential. I'm not sure if it ends up being a force deck or not, because I'm not sure if that curve works out. Like, there's probably some amount of force in it because your leader is force itself. Is it better than Rey? Is it better than Han 2? Is it better than Obi? Is it better than Ahsoka? Ahsoka definitely. Obi almost definitely. Just because of the ability to trade into Sabine. But then the other question is like, okay, is this deck going to be good into Boba? And we do know that red, blue, heroic is already good into Boba, so I think we could say probably on this one because it might be the answer that that deck needed to deal with Sabine a little better. The issue of it flipping on 6 could be a problem if it has to consistently have a line that positively interacts, like it has a positive 2-for-1 trade early with Sabine for the 2 damage on the base. I think that's going to be doable though. I think Anakin's a probably, just because it's going to enable the established red blue heroic deck to now have a most likely better matchup into Sabine without having done any testing. That would be my guess. Like, I'm even tempted to put him into definitely. Moving on to Windu. I I think just because of nature of flipping on 7, as long as Sabine is in the meta, he will not be able to be played. He's not doing anything to positively interact with Sabine. If Sabine drops off, like, the thing is about a lot of these, like, if Sabine drops off the meta, like, we could see a lot of them rising. I think Windu flips on 7. We're gonna have to just like immediately put him into probably not or into unlikely or no. Its ability is very cool. Dealing damage is nice. It does cost a resource though, so you have to have that resource to spare. It's gonna be more of a grindy ability than something that you're doing on curve. The unit also already has to be damaged, so it's conditional. Like a resource and it's conditional. Deploy it is pretty cool, deal 2 damage to each damaged enemy unit, but then you have to have a way to damage them all, and stuff like Bombing Run and stuff like Bloodsport is only dealing damage in one arena. There isn't something that just does an AoE damage to both arenas that you can really combo with this flip and try to get like a both arena board wipe. I think that's going to make him too conditional, and again, I think when he is going to be competing with something like Anakin that can positively interact with Sabine and already established leaders from previous sets in the type of deck that he would go in, I think we could say that he will be a no. I think he will be I think he actually is playable. Like, we could put him into unlikely, but because of the archetype that he's fitting into, I think it's most likely going to be no. By that logic, maybe we should drop OB down, but and Yoda, but there is more there's more reason to keep them up, like OB Sentinel and Yoda's combo potential. Moving on to yellow, we're going to look at Asajj. Excuse me 1 second. Alright, so looking at Asajj, 4 flip, really cool, but it's a 3/4. 3/4 is not a number you really want to be at on 4 when something like 4-LOM exists, when the new 4/3 ambush exists. I don't think I pulled, no, I didn't pull it out. There's a new 4/3 ambush in mono yellow. There's the 4/4 ambush from set 2, the 2/4 raid 2. Green heroic. I wish I can remember these names off the top of my head. Um, just those all existing stuff like Bosk, stuff like Syndicate lackeys coming down the turn after that could all trade positively into her. If she became more popular and Sabine was played, then stuff like Syndicate lackeys actually skyrockets in value since it's going to trade into Sabine and Asajj. But part of the downside currently with Syndicate lackeys is that it, Sabine Darksabers, you can't really do it, but then Asajj isn't running Darksaber. She also wants to run like a density of events, so it's going to be the same similar issue to other deck building has faced, where like your deck is very linear in how it needs to be built. Like, okay, you have to have X number of events, go with it. It does action condense, which is nice. Like being able to action condense, you play an event, but you already have to have a unit established. Like, okay, maybe this is a tempo leader. Like maybe this is a leader that could be what in place of Boba, but like Boba exists, so then why would this ever be played? This has way more downsides than Boba, and the Boba yellow deck that does currently exist doesn't run enough density of events, or like it's still trying to play units on the first few turns, so this ability will come into play later on what is intended to be like an aggro tempo-y style leader. So this will probably need an entirely new deck to be built around it, and I don't think we have. I don't think it's a concept. It's that approachable, and beyond being a concept, I don't think it's a concept. It's that approachable, and then even if that deck did exist, I'm not even sure how good it would be because of Asajj stat lines and because of the deck building conditions. So I think we could go with no for her. We're gonna go into General Grievous. I want to like his ability. I want to like giving Sentinel. Chewie did this in set 1, and Chewie had very fringe play where it's like, okay, you can give Sentinel to a 3 cost or lower. I haven't looked at the set enough to see if there are enough relevant droids to make that worth it. But giving something Sentinel isn't, I think, relevant enough. The droids would also have to be very strong, but because I haven't looked at the droids, I think no matter what, I can't put this into no. But I think we're just gonna go ahead and put it on likely. A 4/8, but the thing is, it flips on 6. Like, it has to attack to activate the Sentinel while it's deployed, so you can't even get a Sentinel first. You have to attack first. You have to have initiative to be able to go like, okay, I attack and then give Sentinel. If you don't have initiative, then same thing for this side. Like, you have to have a droid already on the field and then use an action to give it Sentinel. It's not like with Chewie where you could just play it as first action and give it Sentinel. You have to already have something established on the field. It I think we can confidently put that in no. There is some argument to put it into unlikely because I don't know the droids in this set. I only skimmed this is right after the full spoiler came out, and I only quickly skimmed it. But I'm pretty confident saying it's going to be a no. Go to Jango Fett. A little bit exists in this color combination. Same issue with the former two. Yellow villainy competing with Boba. Is it ever played over Boba? Like, it's just creating a whole bunch of Kintan Intimidators, like turning all your units into Kintan Intimidators, but, like, why am I ever playing this over Boba? Put into no. On to Darth Sidious, Chancellor Palpatine. I know people are really high on this. I actually love the concept. I love a lot of these leaders, the concept and the flavor and the design. I think they're all really cool. It's just when I'm approaching this from a competitive like a highly competitive standpoint, like not just weeklies, but like will this be a successful leader at the PQ, at a PQ or a 7 round plus tournament like a 1K, 4K, etc. Um, this is incredibly taxing on deck building. Like you have to start the game playing a heroic unit. Like how do you even like we're talking about like limiting deck building. This is just like how do you even do this? You have to have so many heroic, you have to have so many villainy to make it work. You have to have a heroic on the field that is going to get defeated to flip it, and then flipping it back is at least easy. But if like they should really be, I think this really needed if you played on both sides. The fact that says if a friendly heroic unit was defeated, you can't flip it on one. You have to have a heroic unit to play on turn one if you want to flip it on two, and that heroic unit needs to die on turn two for you to flip it. Then if you can't flip it and your next play is intended to be villainy, now you can't play that unit, which creates all types of complication for deck building because you can't even do something like, okay, my 2 drops are going to be heroic, my 3 drops are going to be villainy, my 4 drops are going to be heroic, which even that deck wouldn't work because of consistency issues. Maybe if it was one played, like maybe, but it would still have a lot of issues. But like as it's designed currently, this it can't work. It's a super cool design. I love it. But from a competitive standpoint, like you also don't even have a leader to apply to the field. If this format was extremely grindy, if Sabine didn't exist, if Boba didn't exist, and this format somehow became a very grindy format, maybe this would be approachable. But even then, like the way the deck has to be built, like it's just not possible. Like I'm probably gonna play him a little bit, but like go out there, have fun with him. Go out there, have fun with all these leaders. But again, approaching it from a 7+ round event, we're not going to see this leader. At least I think we're not. That's what I'm predicting. Okay, moving on to the last one, Quinlan. A lot of people really like this one again. I don't think he's going to play. Well, aside from people testing him at the beginning. So the issue with his leader side is twofold. One, you have to not have initiative to activate this, since it's the same cost. You have to have your opponent play a unit first, or like I guess if you have initiative in this unit, you can just like attack, go back and forth, back and forth. But like that normally does end up with, okay, well you have to pass at this point. Which there will be scenarios where your opponent can just claim. But then even if you have that set up, if your opponent does play their unit first, you can play your unit after. How relevant is it going to be? It's not going to be relevant on turn one. The turn one units normally trade into each other anyways. It's maybe like against like a crafty smuggler, like a shielded unit. Like, okay, there, awesome, cool, crafty smuggler, that worked well. Like an L337 works really well. Any of the Sabine units doesn't really matter. If a Greedo, like if it has a 1 health turn one play, that's gonna work really well. But then, okay, well now I'm just gonna play more Viper Probe Droid, and it does, if it became popular, it does force deck building decisions on opponents. I can see it being reasonably good into Boba Yellow because of like how the decks are currently designed, especially if they end up on something like Cloud Rider and they're playing that first. If they're playing Greedo first, your turn one just kills their turn one. But that's really it. It stops there. The turn two can't kill their turn two. Turn twos are normally 3/5s, and Quinlan, I guess, could play a 4/3 on turn two, like a Scout Bike Pursuer, Scout Bike Pursuer, Swoop Racer, a Swoop Racer, um, or something similarly stated as a 4/3 on turn two, and then your 4/3 can now trade into the. It's still a 1-for-1 trade. It's just enabling that, and it's like, okay, well, I'm playing this bad card to just be able to trade with your good 3/5, and I'm still gonna take something from it if you don't just straight up 2-for-1 me with like something on the next turn. Well, I guess it's just 4-LOM and stuff. So, it's approachable. There's stuff to do with him that could potentially work. The other big thing that was talked about with him was Sabine. Like you could play modded cohort with him. I finally remember the war ambush name, and the new. I wish I had it open. The new 4/3 ambusher to essentially kill a Sabine on flip, but there's a huge hidden sharpshooter. But there is a huge issue with that. If you were playing, and this is something that like control players will know really well. If you were playing, if you're line on turn 3 against a Sabine, it should just keep passing. They're gonna play K2. If they go back, if they go away from Darksaber, they'll play like Bright Hope or Admiral General Dodonna. Um, Maybe even just play their Darksaber on their turn to play if they know what your deck composition is like. But given if you're playing yellow, you're probably playing bounce, so you don't do that. But they'll just play like K2. They'll just play a 4-drop unit if this is the direction the meta goes, and then you have the option of passing again while they've tapped out and played a unit, the Sabine player, or playing your unit anyways. And pretty often, if your line is like, okay, I'm really trying to kill Sabine, so I could set up this 2-for-1. I guess I could see like one that line doesn't work, but like I'm just like thinking in my head like, okay, maybe you pair him with yellow and you do like a double yellow heroic deck. But then like Han 1 exists, and Han 1, like why would you ever play it over Han 1 yellow like for what it's setting up? And Han 1 yellow already has a good matchup into Sabine. Like, okay, well now you could do the now there are two of them combo, but you have to have specifically one unit out, which is a very hard condition to meet. And then we could go back to the tool here. So drawn 10 cards, you have 6 in your deck. I think it is like a 75% chance, or sorry, 3 in your deck. Sorry, it's a 50% chance of hitting. Now there are 2 of them on curve, and you have to have the condition of only having your leader flip out or another force unit. Okay, so like now we need to design the deck around having force units. Oh man, like wow, we're just jumping through all these hoops, and it doesn't even seem like it's doing anything crazy so far. So like, okay, is this going to be played? And I think the answer is probably not. I mean, maybe this one can go into the maybe category, but I think the answer is unlikely. And yeah, I think that's it. I think this is what I would predict for set 3 leaders. I also think we could just move Rex down here. Because like I said, the support for him just isn't there yet, if not here. Like we can move we can just pretty much put them all in no. Oh man, people might really hate to hear that. But yeah, that again, just my opinion. This is from the opinion of approaching it as like, okay, I'm bringing the new set comes out and I'm preparing for a 7-round event, and do I ever choose any of these leaders? And I can't see it. I just can't see it yet. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully there is something, but I think it's going to be the same issue with set 2, where it's just like we have one leader that is, or we had 2 leaders that are definitively good going into the set, Kira and Han 2, and then Rey being like, okay, like maybe there's something there. This set, I'm pretty sure it's just Anakin, and then everything else is just, I don't think we see anything else. So yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. If you have anything to add, either way, like you tell me I'm extremely wrong on this and tell me why. Just throw it in the comments. Like the video, follow, subscribe, whatever that saying is, cringe YouTube stuff, and may the cards be with you.